Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Here I am with my superior haircut. Anyway, listen, guys. Today is the 17th, Friday the 17th of April 2020. Glad to have you guys here. Now, you know what? Found some supporting evidence for my theories that I was proposing last night about that this virus can spread stealthily through a population with asymptomatic carriers spreading the disease in an asymptomatic form. And we got some really good supporting evidence here today. I'm going to get right to it. Let's open up charts right here and take a look. Our supporting evidence is coming from the U.S. Navy is reporting a stealth transmission rate of 60% on the infected carrier crew of the USS Theodore Roosevelt aircraft carrier. COVID-19, they tested the whole crew. They tested the entire crew of the coronavirus-stricken U.S. aircraft carrier Theodore Roosevelt, and it says it may have revealed a clue about the pandemic. Well, guess what? I've been on top of this. If you watch my channel, Glenn Travels America, where I've been covering the virus all along, I was on top of this about, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks ago. You know, that this thing was moving stealthily with asymptomatic transmission. I was on top of this a long time ago. They're just finally catching up now. Now, it says they sweep tested the entire crew of the coronavirus-stricken ship, and it suggests that the virus could be spreading more frequently by stealth mode in the broader population, with many more people than known walking around with the disease, and they're completely unaware that they have it. So, I was ahead of this a long time ago, and I think I'm also ahead on it when I talked in my show last night about how asymptomatic carriers of the disease spread it in an asymptomatic way, and the people who are symptomatic with the disease spread it in a symptomatic way. And so, if I'm right about this, and I think I probably am, you do not want to catch this disease from a symptomatic person. And this is why social distancing is so important, because if you come across this disease and you catch it from a symptomatic person, in other words, a person that has a heavy viral load, they'll pass that heavy viral load off to you, and then you're going to become extremely ill too, if not on a ventilator. Okay? It's as simple as that. If you catch it off of somebody that's displaying no symptoms, then more than likely you'll develop it in an asymptomatic fashion as well. And also the majority of the people who are carrying this disease, says here 60%, are asymptomatic. I think it could even be higher than that. They say here that this is an extremely worrisome development to them because this is something new that they haven't thought of before. But I think of it as a not a worrisome development, an extremely letting us off the hook development. And the reason why is because if we just did the numbers or the math on what we see coming from the official numbers of the disease, like 650,000 people in the United States have it. We take the death rate, and all we have to do is we realize that this disease is not going to leave us until one of two things happen. Either a vaccine is developed, or we get some herd immunity of 60% of the population or greater has had the disease already. One of those two things has to happen, otherwise we're going to continue on our forward trend. Now, you only have to do the math. If the real number was 650,000, and you take 60% of the population of 330 million, and you do the math, multiplication, and figure out how many deaths you have, it would just be horrific what's coming. But I don't think that's true. I don't think that's what's coming at all, because I think possibly as high as 30% of the population has already experienced this disease in the United States. That's my estimate, around 30% of the population. And that would mean that we're just about halfway to herd immunity, which would be 60% of the population. So it means that this thing's going to get twice as bad before it gets better, but it's not going to get 100 times as bad, because if we did the math off of the official numbers, it would get like 100 times worse. Twice as bad is an awful lot better than 100 times as bad. Okay, it's as simple as that, guys. And so this supports my theory that the virus is spreading silently, and it's finding it's out there searching for people who have weakened immune systems or who are elderly, and it's going to cause them to have symptoms. And if you catch it off of one of them, then you're in big trouble. So the sick should be isolated, that have this disease, very carefully isolated. And also, we should keep up with our social distancing, because that effectively helps to keep the viral load from spreading from one person to another with a low inoculum rather than a high inoculum. Okay, we're going to move on. We're going to take a look at the markets now. Let's take a look now at gold and silver. Silver's at $15.12. It's down 38 cents on the day, making it the cheapest bargain in the history of the world. Okay? The best bargain in the history of the world, if you can buy it. And, I'm going to tell you, I think there's a limited supply left. I don't think there's any new silver coming in from any place. And the people that have bought it up, they're not ready to sell anytime soon. And it's like, okay, it's a bargain, but how hard is it going to be to get? Maybe you can still get some now. I haven't tried. But this is what's coming, Anyway, let's take a look at gold. $16.80 and dropping, $36 down on the day so far. We are experiencing some major deflation. The Fed's dumping money as fast as they can in the top side of this, and the money is leaking through the system like water leaks through a colander. The thing you strain spaghetti in. That's how quick the money's leaking out of the system right now, because the deflation is so profound. Okay, but at what point, does the Fed step in even harder and push the pedal down even harder when they see the effects of this deflation? They have to save the system, and deflation will tear the system to pieces. It'll leave it on the floor in ribbons, and they have to save the system. So we're seeing a real war going on here between the money printers, and the profound deflation that's coming from this virus. We could, like I say, the end of this virus might come a lot quicker than we think. It might only be a couple months away, because of the asymptomatic spread through the population. It might be much further advanced than we could ever imagine, and we might reach herd immunity in only a couple months. And then what happens if the Fed is at full throttle, full tilt, dumping money out there? Like there's no tomorrow, and all of a sudden the economy starts to roar back to life again a little bit. I mean, it doesn't have to roar back big like it was before, but just has to roar back a little bit. I'll tell you what it reminds me of, guys. I got a fire in the stove one time, and it's turned the stove cherry red, and it started a chimney fire and everything else. And I mean, that fire was out of control. So I threw a whole bunch of water inside the stove and shut the door. Steam everywhere. The flames went out, But after a couple minutes went by, that fire started to roar back up again. Didn't roar up to what it was before I threw the water in, but it roared back to life again, And I didn't realize what a powerful, hot burning economy we actually had before this virus came along. I didn't realize the economy was perking along that hot. It's like a hot roaring fire, And this thing has splashed water on it the same way, And it could come roaring back to life, but then with the Fed dumping money in the top side like crazy, then the velocity of money would start to pick up. And we could see, really, that's when you'd see explosive moves up in the price of gold and silver. really, and cryptocurrencies too. Well, let's take a look at cryptocurrency today. See what we're seeing here. Let me open the charts a little bit wider. What we're looking at is 203 billion. Bitcoin dominance of 63.9%. And we're looking at the Bitcoin price rising. It's at $77,089 today. And it's rising, Whereas gold and silver is actually going down today. No reason at all for that. Take a look at the Dow. The Dow's up today. 576 points up. 24,114. Take a look at crude oil. Now this one, oh my gosh, $18.18. I've never seen crude oil so cheap. It's down $1.69 today, or 8.51%. Oh my gosh, look at the price of crude. This is an oil-based economy, and this just is reflecting the deflation. This is tremendous deflation. This is scary. It's getting to the point now where crude oil prices are actually getting scary. This is getting scary. This is getting serious. This is getting real. Look at that crude oil price, $18.18. Oh my goodness. U.S. Treasuries today. We're looking at the long end of the yield curve rising and the short end falling. We're looking at a yield on the 30-year of 1.27. And we're looking at a yield on the U.S. 10-year of 0.65. Let's take a look at the U.S. dollar index. 99.79 on the U.S. dollar index. So there you have it. I think that we're much further ahead toward getting rid of this virus and getting it gone. I've been saying that for quite a while now. I knew it was going to go through the world's population. What's happening is the official tally you see, the numbers you see on these charts and stuff. This is limited by how many they can test in a day. So what's happened is if you take a look at it, you'll see that it's going on a straight line. The amount of they can test, like, I don't know, I'm just going to guess, maybe 100,000 people a day they can test, and that's their limit. Whereas the virus doesn't have any limit of how many people it can infect in a day. So the virus is continuing to go exponential, but their testing is lagging behind because they only have limitations of how many they can test in a day. And so we're not seeing the reflection of how many people actually have this virus. And I'm thinking to myself, that possibly it could be like 100 million people in the United States have it, and they have a wide range and wide variety of symptoms if they have any. So maybe they have no symptoms. Or maybe they got a little sore on their foot, Maybe they got a little red patch between their toes. Don't know, that's the virus, but that's the only symptom they have. Or maybe they get a little stomach ache, Or maybe they got diarrhea. That's another thing. This virus attacks the digestive tract. Maybe that's the only symptom they'll have. Or perhaps they will have a little bit of a sore throat or a headache. Maybe the only symptom they have is a headache. And they're not equating this with the virus. And they get over it and they feel better a few days later. What they don't know is lurking inside their system is antibodies to the virus. They're now relatively immune to the virus. And they didn't even know they had it. And how many of those people are in the United States are walking around that way and all worried? Oh, they're terrified of the virus. They're washing their hands 30 times a day and everything else. But they've already had it. They don't know they've had it. Maybe me. I don't know. I've been trying to avoid catching it. Maybe there's no avoiding catching this thing. Maybe this thing just floats on the air everywhere like dandelion spore. And maybe you can stay in your house or whatever. Maybe this thing is so contagious that it's just because it's novel. But maybe most of the general population just doesn't. So there's another side to this coin is, if this is true, and I mean, I'm just speculating about this, but if it's true, if it's that contagious and that much of the population's already had it in an asymptomatic way, then this would mean that the virus, if you counted all the numbers, if you had some sort of magic counter that could really count all the numbers of people that had it, and then you compare it in the death rate, the death rate would be a heck of a lot lower. It might only be a fraction of 1%, you know? But, and we might be an awful lot closer to being rid of it and having it gone. But that does not nullify the effects, of what's been done. That doesn't in any way take away from the fact that this virus is the biggest in the human history. It is the biggest human rights. This virus is the biggest when you take away somebody's human rights. That's what it's done to all of us around the world. It is violated, this virus has violated our human rights. It has basically, we've had for months now or more, we have been in the same thing as if they convict a person and they send him to home and they say, now you're going to serve time at home. Home arrest is what they call it. The whole world is under house arrest. That's it, house arrest. The whole world is under house arrest. And we've done nothing wrong. This is a violation of human rights caused by the virus. I'm not blaming the governments. The governments are trying to save our lives. But I would blame the responsibility of this virus. This virus is responsible for it. And if you look to the core of this virus, look past the virus, the creators of this virus, if there is creators, now this is a debate whether the virus was created or the virus come naturally. Well, my opinion is, I'm going to give my opinion. People they love bats. They crawl into caves to find bats. They take bats home as pets. For thousands of years now, they're always messing with bats. You know? It's batty the way they mess with bats, you know? And they've never had this virus. If this virus had been there, I would have think all these people that are handling bats and crawling into caves and everything else would have, at some point in the past, if this virus is this contagious, one person would have caught it and spread it to everybody on Earth by now, if it had existed before. But they say this is a novel virus, a new virus. And I believe it's correct. It's a brand new virus. Nothing comes from nothing. If you take a box and you pour television parts inside a box, and you can shake that box all you want, it's never going to make a television. You have to have a person come along and put those parts together to make your TV. Well, that's the way nature works. Nature's like the box full of parts, shaking. It's never going to come together to become a television. Well, that's the way with things like these viruses. They just don't create themselves. And that's my opinion, for what it's worth. So I would suspect that this thing was created. And so the creators then would be violators of human rights, not the virus. The virus caused the violation of human rights. Creators of the virus would be the violators of human rights, And, next time, this time the virus might go through and it's a crime what it's doing, but next time it could be 100 times worse, 1,000 times worse. Next time it could be some sort of a virus that won't leave one thing alive on the face of the earth. So this should be a warning to everyone out there. It's a harsh warning, but we got to look forward and we got to say, well, what about next time? What'll come next down the pike if we let all these laboratories open up and they're all in there doing biogenetic research on viruses? Sooner or later, one of them's going to escape that'll be 10 times worse than this one. Look, Nuclear weapons. We're all so concerned about nuclear weapons. Oh, nuclear weapons, nuclear weapons, nuclear. That's all we've heard for all the way through the Cold War. I lived all the way through the Cold War, and the nuclear weapons never did nothing. They just sit in the bunker, and they gather dust until after a while, the country that creates them comes along and says, oh, all these are outdated. Let's make new ones. And then so they make the new ones, they put them in where the old ones were in the bunker, or wherever they keep them, in the silo or wherever they keep them. And then they get dust all over them. And they're basically just a deterrent. That's all they are. And they're a very controllable deterrent. These viruses are not controllable. It makes them 10 times more dangerous than any nuclear weapon. We got all this concern about nuclear weapons, but nuclear weapons, the way I see it, are not near as dangerous as these darn viruses. This is what we should be concerned about. These viruses are 10 times worse than chemical warfare. 10 times worse. And so the population of Earth should have very, very stringent, tight controls over viral research. It should be to the point of being maniacal, the amount of controls that they should have in place, rather than a loosey-goosey policy where they let any country do it that wants to do it. Like Kim Jong-un or whoever wants to go out and do this research, and they just let them. They're just like loosey-goosey policies around. No, this is what they should really clamp down on. Because next time it could be 1,000 times worse, and all that could be left on the earth is basically cockroaches. All that's left alive with this next virus. It really could be some sort of an apocalyptic situation. This situation is bad enough, but next time it could be a total apocalypse. Listen, thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next show.